Welcome back to the Syndicate Competitive League 5. We're here for day 2. You have just watched the first round of the losers bracket final. And somehow, I don't know how it happened, but it appears that Verge somehow managed to sneak that one out in points. What happened there, Nullarbor?
I don't mean that was in the bag for Dunktown, early on, and then they dropped the ball. They just completely lost that. The vulture died. I don't know why it died. It probably should have just run away, and then they try to win on points. But it was, I don't know, a piloting mistake or something. They should have had that.
I think the error came when they decided to focus on the support of Dunktown, the support of Try the Verge instead of going for the remaining Slefner. When they had the multiple vultures left, that they had all focused their damage, I think that Slefner would have died, and then this points victory would not have been even possible.
It really felt like Dunktown threw that one away, like had that one all wrapped up, ready to take it home for round 2, and then they threw it away. What does this mean for round 2? I mean, we've seen a fairly strong performance from both teams there. Well, certainly for the first half of the match, Dunktown looked very solid indeed. How are things going to change round 2, Alex? What are you expecting both teams to come out with then?
Well, I have a feeling we won't see the vulture set up again, at least in this series. I think if Dunktown does manage to get past this particular matchup, I think they will bring it back, but I don't see them bringing it again twice in a row, which sort of throws the game open, whereas this is the several times that Try the Verge has brought this setup. They seem extremely comfortable with the Slefners, so unless that's banned out, I would guess they would repeat it or some variation thereof.
We're still waiting for official word on the bannings here. Obviously, things change a little bit when we're in these best of 3s in the finals, because we're waiting for the bans to come in as a result of each round completing. But Nullarbor, if you are the captain of Try Verge, and what would you ban right now? What would you ban if you were a team captain of Try Verge or of Dunktown?
I wasn't sure about the Stratius ban either, but I don't know if I'd really change them. I think keeping their the Varga off the field was a good call. I don't know whether they'll adapt and expect them to be bringing that same setup twice, and so be worried about banning that out. I don't think I would change the bans necessarily for Try. I'm curious what Dunktown are going to ban out this round though.
What are your thoughts on this one, Alex? What would you ban? You've got a lot of experience in this field. What would you ban if you were the Dunktown captain?
I don't know if my experience is a terribly good thing to draw from, considering my Alliance's tournament record, but if I was Dunktown, I would definitely ban out the Slefner. I think that's gotta go, and if you take that away, then you Try the Verge in the position where they have to come up with something a bit different. And I would also ban out the EOS, actually, which is the other popular command ship. For some reason, combat command ships are extremely, extremely desirable here, and I think they're making a much larger impact than even the Marauders, which seem to be powerful, yes, but more able to be isolated and dealt with, whereas the command ships just seem to be forming the core of a lot of fleets, and I would want to take the core away from my opponent.
Okay, well, news just in. I've got a little birdie tweeting in my ear who has made me aware of the bannings for round 2. So, Dunktown have banned the Ishtar and the Dominics. Try Verge have banned the Vulture and the Vargar. No Sleipnir ban. What are our thoughts on that, Nullarbor?
I think the Vulture's a good ban, actually. I mean, it's a couple of matches to date. It's been such a strong tank. And like Alexia was just saying, those the good resists and the huge active tank that they can push out. It's just something I think a safe thing to pull off the field. I'm not sure about Dunktown bans. I haven't seen those particular ships necessarily. I wasn't watching yesterday, so I'm not sure whether they were particularly strong yesterday.
What's the thought process there, Alex? What's the Dunktown captain thinking there when he bans the Ishtar and the Dominics?
Clearly fear of the drone meta. but that hasn't been terribly impactful in this particular tournament, so it would signal to me that whatever setup they're fielding is particularly weak against drones. So we may see something particularly heavy in the assault frigate and support end of things. That would be my guess.
Well, while we're waiting here for the next round to start, we have been joined by yet another CCP dev. This one I am particularly fond of personally because he got me very, very drunk during the pub crawl at FanFest this year, along with CCP Falcon. So none other than community representative and the live events author, CCP Etern. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. I'm also the guy that runs the new player training sessions. So
Awesome,
if
yeah.
any-
So talk to us about that because that's a relatively new development, isn't it?
yeah, we just started about a month ago. We're starting our 4th week. We'll start on Tuesday. Basically, it's something that myself, CCP Gargant, and CCP Phantom have been working on, essentially to help new players figure out what the hell to do in EVE.
And what's the attendance been like in these sessions that you've had so far, Etern?
We've averaged between 300 and 400 players per session. We've peaked at around 650, I think, for the one on how to make ISK. But most of them are between like 300 and 400, even for ones that are like pretty boring when you first hear about them. For example, we got 300 for the UI session, and I don't think when most people say, "Oh, I'm going to go take a class on what the UI means," they don't really get excited, but we still got a good number of people for that.
So what's the long-term plan for this project? Obviously, it sounds like it's been very successful initially. One of the criticisms of EVE is that it is not particularly new player friendly, and this looks like it's something that's been put together to try and combat that. Does this project have legs? Is it something that's going to be developed further?
Definitely. We are actually working on turning all of the sessions into videos so that people can watch them out of game. They can just, for people who might not be interested in reading the sessions on the wiki, which they can just go watch the videos, and we're going to break them down into smaller bite-sized chunks, about 3 to 5 minutes each, and put them up on our YouTube channel at some point.
Awesome. Okay. So without delving into too much specifics, live events have been getting more and more popular again recently. How's that line of work treating you at the moment?
Pretty good. We're working on them. There's a team that's working on them, but we've got a lot of stuff in the plans for that. So
Awesome. So have you been following the SCL this weekend so far? What are your thoughts on the tournament so far?
I've been following the today at least. I've forgot that it was on Singularity, so when I saw a bunch of Marauders with their Bastion modes activated, it took me a minute to remember that. So it's been really interesting to see all the new meta that's come out with the Bastion modes and things like that, and I'll be interested to see how that develops.
What are your thoughts on the? I mean, from my perspective, it does feel like some of these fights have squared off down to who has the Marauder or who doesn't have the Marauder, or does either side field the Marauder. It feels a little bit skewed slightly this tournament. Would you agree with that?
From what I've seen, it just seems like everyone's bringing Marauders, so I don't know that it's necessarily skewed that way. I do think it'll probably need to be take a look at for the points and stuff like that to figure out how to get it so that it's not just all Marauders all the time.
Awesome. Okay. So, what are our thoughts on how this next round could develop, Alexia? What are your thoughts on how this one's going to play out, given the bannings that we've seen?
Well, I think by far the most interesting bans are the tri-ban, the Vulture and the Vargar. That targets the Vulture command ship, which is obviously key to Dunktown's setup in the previous match. You've got the Vargar, which could conceivably be switched out for the Golem in that setup as well. So they're completely coring the entire concept behind the Dunktown shield setup. So you're going to have something new coming out of Dunktown here, and whatever it is going to be weak to ships with drone tracking bonuses. So we could see perhaps an almost certainly armor That would be my guess, although that's simply basing it on the bans. Could be completely wrong, but I would say that indicates to me some kind of armor team that's using low sig and blasters, maybe? I don't know.
Bold predictions there from the young Alexiev card. What are we thinking, Nullarbor? How's this one going to play out in your mind?
Yeah, I think that the Dunktown bans are particularly interesting. I don't know what that translates to in terms of what they'll bring, but I have to go for them just for, trying something different at least, if that's their plan.
Awesome. Okay, Etern, I know you're new here. You're the new person on our hosting couch, but can we have some predictions for you for how this match might play out?
I predict one of the teams will bring Battle Ventures. No, actually, I have no idea. The Vultures have been strong, yet it seemed like Dunktown's did something in the last match where theirs failed. I actually would say if they hadn't been banned out that it would be interesting to see them again, but I have no idea.
Okay, well, we're just waiting now for the teams to take the field. I mean, my prediction personally is going to be Dunktown. I'd love to see this go to a third round. I think Dunktown should probably have taken that first round, barring a few simple mistakes. So I would like to see this go to a third round. But we're just waiting now for the teams to take the field. So I'm just going to ask Nullarbor and Etern combined. Now we've got you both on here together. How does the lore of Dust work then? I mean, how much work, Etern, have you guys spent getting that part of the universe right? And how much, I mean, we know that there are a lot of EVE players out there that really, really care deeply about the lore and about the role-playing aspects of the game. Have we seen a proportion of the Dust community take that up yet, or are we just looking at FPS shooters, you know what I mean, playing on a console? Is there any RP community formed out of Dust yet at all?
There hasn't been much of a community formed, but there has actually been quite a number of people who have really taken to the lore. We have a couple of in-character blogs that people have written for Dustmercs. When we were running live events earlier in the year and we had a bunch of fight for the side of the Caldari or fight against Tybus Heth, we had people actually picking sides, and at the time they couldn't choose which side of the fight to fight on because of limitations with the in-game limitations, and we had people suiciding when they got stuck on the Caldari side so that the Galente would win, or things like that. So it's actually I assume it's going to grow the longer much like EVE's role-playing community has.
Nullarbor, we often see in EVE Online that the lore and the role-playing aspects of the game influence in-game designs, whether it be ship hulls or pause, stations or whatever. There is a direct tie. The classic example being rust hulls being the perfect example I can think of. Is it something that's translated into Dust design? Have we seen it as clear, as defined as it has been in EVE so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we actually fairly regularly go and prod the guys on the story team and ask them for input on, we've got a design problem that needs to be solved and we need a setting for it, or we need some, we need to create some conflict, so we're the corporations that are going to be participating in this. That happens quite regularly, and we're always so surprised at the depth and the how much thought that sort of really goes into the stuff that we get back from them, and we love integrating into the game. I think it could be certainly more visible than some of the lore, and I've been really surprised at how much the Dust players have taken to it. Like Etern was saying, some of the events where they're picking sides, where there's not necessarily any game mechanic reason. There's no benefit, to you to, picking one particular side or the other. Yet they really want to participate in that story and see their character as part of that story. So it's been pretty exciting, and hopefully we can grow that and develop that more in game and out of game.
How much time and thought? I mean, obviously you're a very significant mercenary, Alexiev. I mean, how much time do you guys spend thinking about? I mean, me personally, to be perfectly blunt, I don't tend to really think about the role-playing side of EVE when I'm playing it. I mean, I guess there's a little part there in the back of my head that thinks about it, but it's not a significant part of why I play the game. I'm not a Rockweiler, for example, or something like that. I mean, when you're doing your mercenary contracts and your mercenary work, Alexiev, does that come into how you play the game at all?
Not really, other than the sense of, I'm a CEO of a corporation in a virtual world, and I have to sort of act that part. But not in any kind of Eve lore sense do we role play. I mean, you wouldn't say that the Mittani is necessarily role playing when he speaks as the leader of Goonswarm. I don't role play when I'm trying to negotiate mercenary contracts or anything. It's just kind of my regular gameplay in Eve. I'm not doing a character, or I'm not involved in any kind of storyline with the empires or anything like that. And I honestly don't really think too much about sort of the background noise of Eve, the history and what the empires are doing and all that stuff for the chronicles, unless we're directly hired from the event, and then I have to like go and do research about Tybus Heth and all these other people. And it is usually fascinating, but it's just one of those things where the actual playing of Eve takes up a lot of my time, and I don't really have a lot of Eve energy left over for reading about the histories and reading the books and all that stuff.
That's really interesting, though, isn't it? Because you not necessarily participating in the NPC lore and backstory, but you are creating the player lore and backstory, and that's there's a blurry line there. We almost consider that one and the same.
And
I
that's a
know.
good point. There's a lot of back and forth between the two sometimes, especially as more and more Capsuleer activities take on world-shaping events in Eve, which is, I think, probably the end game of where stuff like Rubicon is headed. CCP Seagull has said multiple times that player events are going to have more like world-shaping effects within the Eve universe. And that line's probably going to get more and more blurred as features and development tools come out to implement that vision.
I know at least personally,
Sorry, I was going to ask: is there not, to a degree, a juxtaposition there between what you're doing and the work you guys are doing with getting the NPC lore up and giving Eve that grounding and that base work lore, whereas what we're hearing from CCP sometimes at the moment is that they're really pushing players to make the story. We're seeing the Eve comic book coming out, which is based on player events within the game. Is there a dichotomy there to some degree?
I suppose there's a little bit, but in my mind, it's if it happens, it happens. Like the stuff we provide as lore is backstory, it's a setting, it creates like a framework, and then all the stuff that players do is building on that framework. It's improving it, it's making it more vibrant. So really, I kind of view both the player lore and the lore that we create as nearly one and the same, and both essential to actually making the universe interesting.
So what you guys are doing is you're giving us the canvas and the paint and the paintbrushes, and we're drawing the picture, so to speak.
More or less. Sometimes we also like create paint by numbers essentially and ask you guys to fill in the colors. But then we also don't mind when you guys essentially draw outside of the lines.
I mean, you can't have the picture without the canvas. Just for me personally, I think the picture is more where I spend my time.
I was going to say, if you've ever listened to Alexei Avkarda host a podcast before, you would find that paint by numbers might be quite tricky for him.
Oh.
Zing. Zing. Yep.
Shots fired.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We're just starting to see ships arrive on field now, so we shouldn't be too much longer before we get this second round up to speed. We're starting to see some compositions appear. Alexei, what are your first thoughts on ship compositions as they land on grid?
Ooh, well, we're going to see I don't think this is giving too much away. We're going to see the first tournament appearance of the new Sentinel, which has been buffed with this Rubicon patch. So that'll be quite interesting.
Absolutely. I think we're not too far from getting started now. So I'm going to hand over now to Apathetic Brent and Soldat. Those guys are just getting ready to start commentary on the next round.